Four Shop Dogs had a day. Welcome back to the Henry J. I am starting to work out the headlights. I'd forgotten these things. They're not my taste. It's not my car. We do what we're asked. I was hoping that these drivers for the halos, because they have multiple outputs, I could just use one to drive them, but I can't. So I do have to mount both of those, plus these little, I'm assuming some kind of step down to whatever voltage these actually run on. All of that I've got to find a place to mount. Now, I finally got a headlight bucket out, and I'm sure you notice there's not a ton of room in the back of that. That's our access hole. It's not the easiest to get at, but on the upside, I did find, right here, there is a tiny hole. Unfortunately, it's going to have to be a bigger hole than it currently is. So I'm going to have to come up with a way to mount all that stuff in here somehow. And, and then the wiring will have to come across and into this bucket and out. But it's not going to be easy. Car's painted. It makes me nervous. So I'm going to have to increase that for sure. And then figure out, it's like there's some screws here sticking up. So maybe I can make a little bracket for those drivers for the headlights. So just going to spend a little time dinking around with that and see if I can figure out how best to do this. Okay, one of the problems I have to address, and I've started working on it on this bucket, and I'll go get the other one out in a minute, is this is going to probably actually get mounted on the back, but this wire still has to go inside to plug into the headlight. There's another wire that has to go through too for the halo. So I'm slowly just getting it big enough for this connector. And unfortunately, I have a feeling the same thing's going to happen on the inside of the fender, and I don't know how. Or I may have to run the wires into the fender and then terminate them into the connector, which is realistically probably more likely how I'm going to do it. Unfortunately, the headlight connectors are huge. Not a lot I can do about that. Okay, so I've got both buckets now, and I've deburred these, and I got to get them emptied out, and I'm going to have to dab some paint on them. But, I hate drilling into painted stuff. So, keep working at it, but now this connector fits barely, but you can get it in that bucket. Okay, and I think this is going to work out pretty slick. I can pre-slide it on here and then pop it in the hole after it goes through, because this just barely clears. So I think that'll work out pretty nice. Right now, just adapting some old transmission brackets from some GSS's that I'm not using to these little covers that I took off of the light converters that go to whatever voltage it's supposed to be. Also, while they were open, I went ahead, let's quiet these guys down, and took off the ones we weren't using anyway. So, since we weren't using them, get rid of them. That'll definitely help. So now I'll be able to have those bolted, and then these are going to go, because of that GSS bracket, and get mounted on some of these studs that are sticking up here. So that should give it a little more strength. ShopDog says, this is boring. And for him, it probably is. But let me find some little screws. So I just modified the second one, because the way I've got the first one set up, see there's two bolts in there. So you can see, well, maybe you can see how that bracket is. That's the hole right there that the wire is going to have to go through, but I'm going to put a grommet in that. So that'll be this wire. When that's on, the halo turns orange. So this goes into the bucket for the halo. So that should be good. And then what I did with the actual light socket, you can see you got the two different ones, is on the actual light socket, we mounted that adapter right on the back. So when you look inside the bucket, that's where the light will plug in. And then that's right on the back. Should be under very little to no stress. Should work out great. Second one's ready to mount. So that'll pop right on there. This will come out that hole when we get it. And this comes forward to run the halos. And in the annals of you just never know what you don't know, I have just run, in fact, luckily it even says headlights on it, 2 wires in. They're heavier gauge than they need to be. And this wasn't very fun because it's really hard to get up in here. So those 2 wires are now right here, and I'll put a couple spades and a temporary switch on them at some point. And those wires are going to allow the person in the car to turn the halos off, because I don't think it's legal to just drive around with the halos on. And I don't know that he always wants to have to pull out his phone to turn them on and off. So we had noted that all you have to do is turn power on and off, and the halos go off, no problem. So when I do these guys, what I'll do, since it draws literally no current, is a very small relay. Let this, run the relay, because remember, I'm going to have relay for the fan, or well, 2 relays for the fans, and now obviously a relay for the halos. I'll get those mounted here somehow real nice, and I will just feed the halos through a fuse off of the battery jumping over for the fans. It'll be fine. It draws less than 1/4 of an amp. It's no big deal. But one of those things I had not run a wire for because I didn't think about it. And there was nothing in this harness I was willing to sacrifice to do it. The other thing is, I honestly don't know where the horns for this are, or even where they went originally. I thought they were mounted on here somehow, but I'm going to have to ask Harlan where the horns are, because I'm going to have to get that mounted. But I'm getting really close to bundling this new wire with the temperature sender and the headlight going forward harness, and we'll get those running. They'll come down in here in this valley, and then the headlights will branch into this compartment and then back across into that compartment. I don't know how the turn signals and the parking brake the running lights are going to go yet, because I haven't taken these apart. I think that may be the next thing I do, to see what on earth I'm using to run those. Okay, well, there's no sockets or anything in them, so we'll have to figure that out. And you can see it's just hangs out in the back, so gonna have to figure out what we're doing for lights there and get that set up. That'll be fun. Well, with that, and knowing that now I saw there are cast grooves in here, so that's for hopefully like an 1157 when I got one sitting here. Yeah, it feels like it's for those, which means there was probably a spring and a little washer plate, 2 wires, and a ground that slid in there. Seriously doubt we have those. I may have another unit somewhere I can harvest those out of, but not going to hold my breath on that. You know, it'll look like a little brown fiber plate with 2 contacts on it and a spring behind it. And they're not something I tend to use. I may have to alter that and install a socket or something. Anyway, I'm going to think on that. It's getting late and the sun's going down. And, it's Sunday, and I think I'd like to go in, hang out with my wife. She's finally on the mend, so that's good to know. Been a while. Everything was COVID for so many years that you forget that you can still catch a cold. So the other thing is, I'm really debating on whether or not I'm going to set this temp sensor inside one of these fenders instead of trying to get it out in here. I think it's going to be more than close enough. Shouldn't really build a ton of heat in there. It is ventilated, so I might think about that. It'd be nice to have it hidden and out of the way. So we will see. But I'm going to think on that. And like I say, I hate drilling holes in the paint, so I really like to think about it for a while before I do. So ShopDog says, thanks for watching. ShopRex approves of this video.